love him, IFBB champion, Arnold Classic winner, Mr. Getting It Done. Ladies and gentlemen, Kai Green, let's get him on up here. I swear he's coming. There he is. Kai Green, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. All right. And of course, the one, the only, Kai, we're going to have you sit right there at the table. Yeah. We've got a really high-tech camera that's going to show you guys some cool stuff here in a second. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you know him, you love him. It's not like I have to reintroduce him, but why not? He is the Terminator. He is the Governator. He's the Predator Killer. He is a global icon, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right here, Arnold.
Good to see you, Kai. Good to see you. Right.
And Arnold, just to kind of play off of what you were saying a minute ago, I think we can officially dub this Arnold Con. Or perhaps Conan. I don't know. Trying to come up with something clever.
I think it sounds good.
But you know, I mean,
but I think the important thing is to recognize the fact that there's two audiences kind of like alike.
Yes.
And so I went to many of the Comic-Con events. The first one in San Diego, which is the biggest one, and then I went to Texas, the one, and the others, and throughout my career. And I always felt kind of like the audience when I meet them and I take pictures, and I talk to them, and we have panel discussions. It's the same type of audience that comes to the Arnold Classic. So the last time when I was in Texas, doing a Comic-Con event, I got in touch with the man that created it, the Comic-Con in San Diego, and I said, let's work together on this. Come to Columbus, check out what we're doing. And so we started small this year with Comic-Con to have them partner with us. And it's just another way of making the Arnold Sports and Fitness Festival bigger. So we will have a Comic-Con, the Arnold Sports and Fitness Festival. We tried it now in Columbus. And this is what this event is all about here, the crossover. And it's really interesting because here's like myself, who comes from the bodybuilding background and who has done Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer and Red Sonja and all this kind of comic book characters. And then you can almost call it Terminator a comic, even though it doesn't come from the comic book, but I mean, it has become a comic book. And then we have Kai Green here, who is a bodybuilder who is an unbelievable artist. And you know, you would not think that someone that big, that has like, 25-inch arms or whatever he has, I mean, it's just enormous. I mean, I don't even know how you can find a jacket or if they can find enough material for the jacket. But in any case, so that this guy has the sensitivity and really the kind of brain to create great art like that. It's really amazing. So there's a great crossover there. Does his own comic books he draws, and in a really fantastic way. And then Doug, of course, he is a comic book artist and is also a power lifter. So here's a crossover. Interesting. So as you can see, there's a marriage there between those two worlds. And I think here's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, people come to Comic-Con to celebrate superheroes, and these guys are real-life superheroes. It's like we get to meet them and talk to them in person, and seeing like the lines of people lining up to see Kai this weekend. And it's really great having Doug here because I've known Doug for a couple of years, and I think Doug is amazingly talented. But I think a lot of people don't know that Doug also is very passionate about working out and really powerlifting and all the things that he does. And it's amazing to see a comic artist that applies that not only to their life, but their creative energy. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you guys about, was how bodybuilding and working out has contributed to, I know Kai, you've talked about this with your theory of muscle, I don't want to get it wrong, mind muscle, yes, mind muscle control. So how has that applied to the creative side of what you do? And I'd like for each of you to speak on that.
Hey!
There he is.
What's up, everybody? Oh, wow, thanks for the question. Thank everybody for coming out. Wow, how do you answer that? Mind and muscle connection is all that good stuff that happens when we think very, very hard about the muscle that we're trying to train. We think very hard about why it's important to train it and how my life will be improved on the other side of doing that. And I think what happens is by thinking it and willing it to happen and concentrating on looking and working, the muscle starts to come to life. It starts to respond to the thing that you're doing. So with each rep now, we try to make more activity increase and hopefully end up to develop the physique that we're looking for as a result of doing it. So the mind-muscle connection talks about just becoming aware of your instrument and using it in the desired way.
Doug, would you like to talk about how your workout routine has helped you creatively?
Sure. Do you want me to use this? Well, I've been a comic book artist for 30 years, but I first discovered comics when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And really, the first thing is, and I was always an artist, very busy little kid, but the first thing I really wanted to do was not to be a comic artist, but to be a superhero. And I'm not kidding, I even ran around my neighborhood dressed up as a superhero. And I couldn't find any criminals in my little town, but I love the look, I love the power, I love everything that was expressed, the heroism, the saving, but it all manifested in this concept of a big, powerful human being taking care of others, basically. And so it's always physical, you know, but I'm an artist too. And eventually, I wandered onto Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was 17 years old, and I thought, well, that's what I've been looking for all this time. I mean, just to be totally honest, when I saw your physique, that's what I was looking for expressed in comics. And that's when I had started weight training specifically. And there's always that connection, you know, you're trying to build yourself, you're trying to create, myself, I was trying to create what I was drawing. And it's been a lifetime endeavor. I spent a lot of time, you know, Kai comes from a very active experience, and then he draws, I come from a very incredibly sedentary experience. You know, I spend, a 12-hour day is pretty common for me to work. It's not unusual. So, you know, for me, the release and everything, to get out into the gym and to express myself physically, to hit the weights and to move kinetically and to feel strong has always been a part of my life. I haven't deviated from it ever since I touched the first weight I did at 17 years old.
And Arnold, just to kind of play off of that same question, talking about how it can influence creativity in your life as well, coming from a background where you trained so hard and then you started getting casting these movies, did you find that your routine allowed you to kind of expand your own mind creatively so that you knew what you wanted to bring to the roles, or maybe you looked at a role in a different way from the way you saw it when it was originally presented to you?
Well, I was very fortunate that I was there at the right time, because when I was starting out weight training, I saw the Hercules movies, and I thought that they are made regularly throughout the year, throughout the decades, and so on. I was not aware that there was a period in the 50s and early 60s where those movies became very popular. And it inspired millions of kids, including myself, seeing Reg Park and Steve Reeves on that big screen. So when I got into bodybuilding, and I said to myself, I got to win Mr. Universe like Reg Park and like Steve Reeves, and then I can get into movies and so on. So I did that. I trained and trained and trained, and to win Mr. Universe and Mr. Olympia and all this, then to get into movies. But then in the 70s, when I started getting into movies and going out for interviews, everyone said to me, says, what are you doing? I mean, look at you, you weigh 250 pounds. There's no movie for you. The Hercules movies were over. The time period was over. They said to me, says, the new sex symbols is not like Reg Park and Steve Reeves, but it's Dustin Hoffman and Woody Allen. And I said, what? I was like shocked. So they said to me, says, you know, you're too big, you cannot get into movies. I mean, you maybe can play a football player or a wrestler or a bouncer, something like that, but not a leading role by any means, and plus you have an accent, so forget about that, you know. People get scared when they listen to your accent. And so there was all of this negative stuff, and they thought that my name was not pronounceable and all this. So, but the fact was that I kept, you know, doing my bodybuilding, and then we did eventually Pumping Iron, and then Pumping Iron made Ed Pressman, the producer, famous producer, to look at Pumping Iron and said, oh wow, there's a personality that could actually play Conan. I'm going to buy the Conan rights. So he bought the Conan rights, and then he sold the whole thing after developing the script and everything with Oliver Stone, was the first writer for the Conan movie. And he wrote, of course, a $70 million movie that was way, way too expensive. So then John Milius came in and toned it down, and that all took a few years. So by the time came 1979, they signed the deal with me, and it was then Dino De Laurentiis bought the project, Universal Studio bought the project from Ed Pressman, and so they all worked together, and they hired me to be Conan. So I got in there really reluctantly, in a way, because at that time they didn't do muscle movies. So this was the first one again, and so when it came out in 1982, it was #1 at the box office. So that's when they realized, well, wait a minute, maybe muscles are back in again. And so there was this huge turnaround in the acceptance of muscles. And then, you know, all the other stars started training, Sylvester Stallone and Van Damme, and all of those guys that were in martial arts or in boxing, but all started building their bodies, and they became kind of the new heroes throughout the 80s of all those action movies. So I was very fortunate to be there at the right time. I benefited from that. And of course, I was very happy when the whole Hollywood establishment said that you would never ever be a leading man with this body. That John Milius, after we did Conan the Barbarian, said to the press, if we wouldn't have had Arnold, we would have had to build one. And so that was kind of like my justification. I say, oh, finally, here's a guy that says, we needed this body, otherwise we couldn't have done this movie. And then, of course, later on, when I did Terminator, Jim Cameron said to the press, this movie wouldn't have worked if Arnold wouldn't have had this accent, because he actually talks like a machine. Kind of insulting, but I mean, nevertheless, it worked, and I was very happy, because that's another thing they said, you know, the agents and the managers and the studio executives, you would never ever be a leading man with this accent. And sure enough, Jim Cameron again has kind of enforced the thing that yes, it was his accent that made the movie Terminator successful, and not just the look of it, but also the way he talks, because he was totally believable. So I was very happy that both of those things were kind of like, you know, I made an obstacle an advantage, an asset. And this is what it is all about. I think it's a good lesson for life, that you never listen to the naysayers and you just ignore them, and you just go and see your vision and go after your vision. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I don't know who those interviewers were, but I think it's safe to say you had the last laugh on that. So congratulations there.
I just wanted to ask the guys, because there was one guy that was so famous for drawing and painting Conan, which was Frank Frazetta.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to hear from you guys because Frank Frazetta actually used muscle guys and then exaggerated that, because that's why he was so accurate the way he drew Conan always. It was like amazing, the musculature and the size of Conan, and the way how well he painted movement was really, you know, with the sword and just the facial expressions and everything. So I wanted to get kind of a take of you guys, what you thought of Frank Frazetta, and did he inspire you guys?
Well, entirely, Frank Frazetta inspired me. In fact, every morning I'd wake up and when I was a kid, I'd look, you know, at the foot of my bed at the wall, and there was the Conan the Barbarian by Frazetta. My walls were plastered in Frazetta, and every once in a while I would circulate the posters around, and some of them were a little bit dicey, you know, but my mother recognized, you know, the beauty of the art. I mean, he did such incredible imagery, and it was so powerful, and if he drew a character with weight, you could just feel the ponderance, or if he drew something majestic, his sense of storytelling within a single image was so dramatic. It's hard not to fall in love with it. It was a big part of my I don't know, of my formative time as what do I want to draw, you know, how to draw something powerful. And He was a master of it. I don't know if anyone else ever has really been able to do that kind of imagery other than him to the successful degree that he's done it. He's inspired so many. His ability is just otherworldly. He's a total outlier when it comes to that sword and sorcery, but other things that he did, everything he touched, artistically, even in his worst, was better than what most people could do at their best.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. Frank Frazetta, absolutely. As a young man coming up, I'm a little younger than you, Arnold, just a little bit. But with saying that,
Just remember, you could be my grandson.
this is true. This is true. But with that, though, the Frank Frazetta reference is one of those things that inspired the whole pop culture. In fact, a whole movement of artists were able to find their feet and inspiration from the works of Frank Frazetta. Not only did he really help to solidify the imagery and the concept of Conan and made it more accessible to everybody that got a chance to see the future work that you were able to do. Frank Frazetta, I think, was just one of those people that really kind of paved the way to help shape people's visual perception of what could be, and certainly the sword and sorcery genre of storytelling and comic books and film were forever changed as a result of his influence. I grew up at a time when Thundar the Barbarian and Star Wars and these things were very, very popular and celebrative of the things that we got a chance to see Frank Frazetta do. So with that said, yeah, it was a very, very big and moving experience to get a chance to see the work of Frank Frazetta. And since him, the other artists that have come along behind him, like Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell and a number of really awesome acrylic and oil painters, I guess have been able to move on. In fact, recently I've gotten a chance to work with a group of new artists that are young, but are just as inspired, by looking at the work of Frank Frazetta. He's passed on, but his legacy and the body of work that he's left is tremendous, and it influences us even today.
Yeah, I mean, the way he drew women, the way he drew animals, I mean, it was just unlike anything you had ever seen before. And it had such a life to it. And I'm sure that really informed when you saw that artwork and you were going to do Conan, you probably thought, well, now I can relate to what this is, and I can interpret what this is just through some of his artwork and his paintings.
Well, it's I have not been intimidated that often in my life. But when I looked at those magazines and his paintings, I tell you, it was intimidating. Because as I said to myself, how do I, with this body that I had, how can I even come close to looking that dramatic that Conan looked in the Conan books? The way Frank Frazetta drew it and the way Robert E. Howard wrote it. I just felt like it would never match up to this kind of drama that he has created, and the magic and the physical magic. And so it was interesting when John Milius directed Conan, and I just was finished with the Mr. Olympia competition in Australia, so I was ripped. And Milius looked at my body and he said to me, he says, I don't want you in this movie to look like a bodybuilder. He says, I want you to go and look a little bit more like these are natural muscles from sword fighting and from the battles and all this, but not very organized and refined like that. So he made me actually lose some of the definition, which of course when I went to Spain and started eating there on location was welcome to me, because there was a lot of great pasta and good food, and so I couldn't have held my definition anyway at that point. So it was kind of welcome that he said that. But so like 2-3 months later, after the Mr. Olympia competition, when we then started, rehearsing and filming, he said, okay, now you have the perfect body. So then we started the pit fights and all of those kind of great fights where I was, or even the fire scene with the witch where I was naked and we were rolling through the fire and all this stuff. So it was, he then said to me, he says, okay, now the body is perfect. And we watched together the dailies, which was always the footage that you filmed the day before. You look at it the next night. And we looked at it and he says, this is perfect, keep that body the way it is now. And so I worked out every day 2 hours to keep the body this way, and I was in a somewhat of a diet, but not a strict diet, because it didn't need to be that defined. So, like I said, he was happy, and then when the movie came out, everyone else was happy with my physical development. But I tell you, it was very intimidating because Frank Frazetta drew the body so dramatic and so defined and just so ripped and muscular and everything like that. So I thought I never can live up to that kind of an image.
Well, speaking of intimidating and keeping in the spirit of this Comic-Con theme, Doug, Kai, we're going to put you guys on the spot. We would like to witness you draw for us, and we've actually got a camera, I believe a high-tech camera overhead that is going to watch what you draw. No intimidation at all, gentlemen. So, but we would love to watch you do your thing so that everybody can kind of see the process and see, how you do what you do. And while you do that, Arnold and I will keep talking, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. We want you guys to get some questions in as well. So,
I just want to come in and just ask Doug quickly a question, because
Sure.
you started, kind of painting Batman, right?
Yeah, I've been working, I've worked on Batman. I work for DC Comics. I've worked Superman, Justice League. I've done a Batman run in the past, and now I've returned for a book called Detective, which is an anniversary issue leading up to, the next issue coming out is issue 1000, which is a landmark.
Yes.
It's pretty rare, to have the thousands comic of anything. Last year was Action, this year Detective, and I was very fortunate to be a part of this.
Yeah, so luckily, I played in one of the Batman movies.
Yes, you did.
Batman and Robin playing Mr. Freeze. And so this is why I was interested when I saw your Batman drawings, and said to myself, what got you interested in specifically in drawing Batman?
The thing about Batman is, Batman's a human being. So everything that Batman is, Bruce Wayne is built into himself, through his willpower, through his effort, through his desire for justice and to protect Gotham. And I think a lot of people connect with Batman because the idea is he's a human being that can be killed, and it is through his personal fortitude that he does what he does. And that's really what attracts Batman. Well, plus he has just a really badass costume. And it's fun to draw. Honestly, it's really fun to draw. And I would say we've been told that one of the most identifiable emblems in the world is the Superman signal, and Superman deserves it. I spent years working on Superman, but I know that the people are very much behind Batman. And I meet people, all over the world who are dyed-in-the-wool Batman fans, and they make their presence very well known. And it also is obviously played out, and when it comes to Warner Brothers and their success with their films, Batman is the one. It's the people's choice.
Yeah, and we should note that the issue Doug is referring to, issue 1000, comes out in 3 weeks. It's
I think
March
so.
27th.
Yeah, I think we got an extra weekend. I've been working tirelessly. I've been a slave to my desk, 3 hours a night. I will sleep very little, work way too much. And this is literally like coming here to compete in the Olympic lifting meet that I did last night as the oldest person in the B session of the 102s. I felt every bit of the long-term work, and I went, and because I was so excited to be here and the adrenaline and being on the platform, I did really well. I was very pleased. Great opportunity. I'm so glad this has been here. This is fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's great to have you here, Doug. It's really fantastic. Before you start drawing, I just want to ask Kai, one question quickly, because you're an artist and a bodybuilder. And I always felt like when I was kind of sculpting my body, that it was kind of like being an artist, because you have to have the same sense of kind of artistry and proportions and symmetry. And you know, you have to have a clear vision of what that body should look like as the finished product. In order, it's kind of like an artist, except using, you know, kind of like clay and your hands. You use or a chisel, you know, and marble or something like that, and a hammer. You use basically, you know, dumbbells, barbells, machines in order to sculpt your body. How did you feel about it? How much did you think of you creating your body was kind of like as being an artist?
I think you are exactly right. I think the first time we all got a chance to hear you talk about this was in the original Pumping Iron. You talked about, you know, like Michelangelo with clay and sculpting, and how a masterful bodybuilder would think of himself as a sculptor. You know, and you said he would, you know, take clay and slap them on, as a bodybuilder would turn around and build his delts up, you know, to have a visual appearance laterally on his physique. Yeah, I feel like the artistic mind is something that a artist, a competitive bodybuilder, just have in common. You have to have it. I think the artistic mind, every time I've ever thought about drawing, or every time I've thought about training, I think the presence of that artistic mind is seeking expression. And I think that whether we call it, you know, competitive bodybuilding and aspire to take it to a level of professional ranks or not, or whether you just pick up a pencil or a pen, or I think everywhere you choose to look, I'm able to find, when I do, the presence of the artistic mind being expressed. I think it was because of that presence, because of that artistic mind, I was able to really get that concept that you talked about in the original Pumping Iron. I think that every aspiring bodybuilding athlete, and athlete in general, that's able to think about the craft, or their competitive experience as a craft, and see themselves as a craftsman, have to pay homage or reference the presence of that artistic mind. I think it's in everything that we do. And so, to answer your question, as an artist, I began to draw before I learned my ABCs, and I don't think that it was a credit to anything else but the presence of that artistic mind seeking expression. And with that, I think people were able to identify early in my life, hey man, you know what, you got a penchant for that artistic stuff. I think I see it in my posing. I see it in the ability to be able to think about balance and symmetry. I think that everything that we believe we understand about looking at a physique and identifying first and second, muscularity versus symmetry, and being able to put it all together and identify a winner at a physique show, is really based on our awareness of that artistic mind seeking expression.
That's great. All right, let's see you guys draw. Do you guys need anything? Has everybody got what they need?
All right.
Okay. God. Don't be nervous, guys. We're all friends here. Everybody loves you. So, now I think this is going to be great, and this really is going to kind of, like you said, Arnold, the crossover of kind of the Comic-Con mentality. I think we're seeing that take place live here on stage. This is really fantastic.
Yeah, plus, I mean, this camera that is overhead and films you guys, it's going to go out to millions of people, so just be nervous, don't relax.
We want to take some audience questions, but before I get to that, I want to ask you one last question, Arnold. So Marvel Comics just recently got the rights back to Conan, and now they're putting out new Conan comic books. There's a chance that, actually I think they've even announced that we may see Conan intermingle with the Marvel Universe. So that kind of opens up the possibility that if they wanted to, they could make a movie where Conan interacts like with the Avengers or something like that. What do you think about that kind of, I mean, it's amazing that we've reached that level with creativity, isn't it?
Well, I think it's in the right place with the Marvel Comics. I think that the Conan story and the Conan comic books should continue forever, you know. And I think that it's good that there are creative artists, that are good artists that can continue painting those paintings and all that stuff. And when it comes to the movie, the sad story about all this stuff is that an estate like this, a Robert E. Howard estate, who created the Conan books and all that, when someone buys those rights, they now control the rights. And they have their own vision of what they want to do. And the guy that is, you know, that has the rights is some young guy that, you know, is trying to figure out and navigate his way through Hollywood. And this is not easy to do. So there's people that say to him, I said, why don't you start with a TV series? So then he negotiates for a TV series, and then that falls apart. Then he negotiates for something, you know, with Netflix, and maybe that falls apart. Then he decides to make a movie, maybe. And so in the meantime, we have been trying to convince him for years now that the way to go is to come back and to hire really a great director and to do another Conan movie. And to have me play kind of the last Conan, me playing the last Conan movie as King Conan. When Conan is in reality, at that time,
We all want that, yes.
when Conan is like 70 years old and he's disgusted with the, you know, sitting on a throne and being the emperor and the king, and you know, and then something happens after that, whatever direction it's gonna go. You know, there's some people that have written scripts where Conan then goes off and is retired, but then gets called back to duty because you know, the whole kingdom is falling apart. Or if it is some intrigues internally in the kingdom where his half-brother tries to kill him and is launching a big attack, and he knows that's coming and he feels like he's too old, and he sneaks out, goes with the peasants and trains himself again amongst the peasants to pit fighting and all this, to train himself again so he's ready for this onslaught in a castle, goes back, and then he gets attacked and of course wipes out everybody. So I read so many of those type of stories, but they're all really creative and great stories that have been written. So it's not far away from really creating a finished script. The only one that really has to pull the trigger there is the people that own the Conan rights, to go and say, yes, let's do a movie, let's go to Netflix, whoever it is, and let's hire this and this director that is very creative and can elevate the project to make it really a winning project and all that stuff. So there's many ways of going in this way, but I hope it will be done very soon. So that because I think it's a great idea.
I hope so too. If we need to write to somebody, just tell us who we need to write to, and
Okay.
we'll make sure that happens.
I will let you know.
All right, let's kick off some audience questions. I want to start with the gentleman with the Doug Mankey print right here in the front row. Yes, sir. What is your question?
Do we have a mic for the gentleman? And
Do we have another
ladies,
mic
whoever?
that we can take out into the audience, or no?
Of course, there is one in the back. Why don't you get it to us now?
I think there. Do we have one?
Don't
or no?
vegetabilize in the background there, guys. Very nice. We're right here. See, if you would pay attention, you would know. Okay, go ahead now.
I just want to thank you for the wonderful memories I have. I grew up watching your movies thanks to my dad, mostly. And you continue to inspire me, and I'm having trouble talking right now. But it was nice meeting you this morning at the photo op, and I just wanted to thank you again for all that you've done and continue to do.
Thank you.
No
Thank you very much. Thank you. No question. Thank you very much. And you did, by the way, a great job talking here, because I want everyone to know, never worry about worrying about talking, because it's internationally known that the number one fear is not dying or having an accident or getting really terminally sick or anything like this. The number one fear is public speaking. So what you just did was you overcame your own fear. So you should be very proud of that. Anyone that is able to take the microphone and to say a few words is really ballsy. So I just want you to know, congratulations, because you did it. You overcame your fear.
Right here.
Hi, Arnold. It's so interesting to me to hear you talk about how when you were coming up, you were looking to guys like Steve Reeves, thinking, yeah, mate, I can make this transition from bodybuilding into the films. And then there being this lull, which you overcame, because it's true, you know, with Conan the Barbarian, which came out the year I was born, you know, without that film, there would be none of, you know, half the films in the 80s would be wiped out. You know, there would be no Rambo, Dolph Lundgren certainly wouldn't have a career. But something that I find really interesting and strange about all of those films that started with Conan is that all of them involve you guys getting tortured in various strange and interesting ways. I just wonder what you think about that, why it is, you know, you spend all this time torturing yourselves in the gym and then you get there on set and you're being like flogged or electrocuted or whatever it is, you know, why, and that just doesn't happen anymore. A, why do you reckon that was a trend in that time? And B, where has this sort of torture of muscled beefcake gone in the modern day?
Well, I think that as you know, stories, when you have a body like that, like Stallone and Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren and all this, you come in, so you make it believable that you are the hero. Because beforehand in the Westerns and in all the action movies, Superman and Batman, they didn't really look believable. I mean, it worked because the way they told the story, they were creative directors, but the body never looked believable. And then all of a sudden, in the 80s, they all started training. Even Clint Eastwood was training like a fanatic. And all of those action heroes that never really trained that much started training, and they started using short sleeve shirts in the movie and all this stuff. So, but the disadvantage of it is, when you have a muscular body like this, is that people believe, yeah, you can wipe out anybody because you look believable as an action hero. But the story doesn't work if you look always that you can wipe out anyone, because there is now no kind of a threat. And this is why in Conan, for instance, John Milius insisted that everyone around me has to be bigger and stronger. So he hired guys from Denmark that were like 6'4", or Ben Davidson, who was in the movie, who was 6'6". And then he hired, everyone around me was like guys that were much more scary looking, and they could wipe me out in no time. That's what he wanted them to look like, so that Conan looks more vulnerable. And so then when I get into, you know, in a situation where this guy's trying to beat me up, or like they did, they captured me and then they tortured me and they hit me and all of this stuff, it really worked, because you got to take the hero down so that in the end there's an arc, so that you root for him and you say, oh my God, what's happening here is over for him. And then you kind of get out of the situation and you make your way back. It's just like in a Rambo movie. In all of those movies, that is the case. So you always kind of, you start out high, you establish the hero, then something happens where he now goes down. And he gets tortured, and he goes through the worst kind of a situation, and then somehow gets back. Now the audience is rooting for you, as they always root for an underdog. And that's why you have those movies all have, you know, that the guy gets tortured, or he gets miserably treated, or electrocuted, or you know, like in my case, just, you know, cut up with the sword or whatever, or with a hammer, or crucified, exactly. So I was in a tree of woe. I was on this tree, you know, kind of biting off the vulture's neck, and you know, that was infested with lice, and my whole mouth was full of lice afterwards. I had to kind of gargle alcohol to get rid of the problem. So, but I mean, it was like all of those kind of things. But that's part of the story. That's what makes it. All right?
We're going to go right here, and then we're going to come over here. It is, and also, if you guys have questions for Doug or Kai, you can ask those as well. So let's go right here, sir.
It's my honor to be here to experience this with you. I try to don't get emotional because then I can talk. My dream, soon I come to this country, one of the things I wanted is to meet you one day. sorry about that. I don't mean it. It's mean a lot to me. I started working out the time I was 13 years old in the gym. I remember how your poster.
Where are you from?
I'm from the island, from the island of Crete.
From a Greek
For-
island.
For the Greek island, the island of Crete of Heraklion,
Crete.
the gym, it was that time we meet the men in the poster who have the big spirit to influence the whole world. I think your legend will stay for very many generations, and I think you distribute the most than the most people in the lifetime. For the people who appreciate what you give them, many people maybe they don't understand these days, they think it's movies or something else, but the biggest thing I think you give the world is the right mind to stand, to create. The old Greeks say, but your body is making your healthy mind. My lifestyle was bodybuilding. I don't do it for money. I was inspired. You was my idol. I was the first one in my hometown who bring 3 gyms to the hometown, and my nickname it was your last name. Well, I don't think I even look close to you. And anyway, because I did it for sport, but I think my mind built out of what I did through help my career. Otherwise,
Right.
and I don't want to take a lot of your time.
Do you still have the 3 gyms?
It's still, and I think it's growing now. It's more people, they influence over there.
Right.
I've been living here 30 years, and finally, I don't think I dreaming or reality. And I want to shake your hand after the show, if I can. I want to ask you one question, who I think to me is very important. For all the people who working out, they go to the gym. The goal is to build themselves to be better people. I think that will help them. That's the main stone. That's the main goal. No money, no anything else. They will win that with them. That's my experience. Why you ask them what you can say a regular, typical person he have to consume every day for food, to drink, to stay healthy and working out?
It's a good question. For just a regular person, what would you recommend that they consume on a daily basis and then work out for a regular person?
Well, first of all, I don't even know what the definition of regular means. You know, what is regular? Somebody, but I mean, there's people in here that bench pressing 500 pounds and they consider themselves as regular people. So I mean, I don't know what that means. But in general, let me just say, it depends on what your age is. So if you're, for instance, 20 or 25 years old, you get away with much more than when you're 60 years old. And so I would say if you are like the first half of your life, you get away with more than the second half of your life. I would say that you should watch much more what you eat. I would be then much more vegan later on in life. I would eat less meat and less chicken and less ground beef and all of those kind of things, and more green-based food, vegetable-based food, because it's healthier for your arteries, it's healthier for your body, and you don't need all the meat. So many bodybuilders come up to me when they're in their 50s and they say, I just found out I had gout in my feet. And gout comes from uric acid, it comes from too much meat. And a lot of people have these problems, but you can get rid of it by just getting more vegetable-based food. And so Jim Cameron, the director of Avatar and Terminator and Titanic and all those things, he got me into the vegetable-based foods. He gave me for a Christmas gift one year a chef from Texas to come over to my house and to teach my chef at the home and everyone in the house how to cook vegan. And it was the most unbelievable thing, unbelievable gift. First I thought it was kind of silly, but then when the guy came over and he taught everyone how to cook, it was fantastic. And now I eat most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, vegan food or vegetarian food. And then the other 20% I eat still meats. Like here, for instance, yesterday I had a great Wiener Schnitzel, which is a breaded veal. and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I'm not a fanatic like Jim Cameron is, but I do eat most of the time now, you know, kind of vegan food, and it's much healthier. So I would recommend that. But in the first part of your life, man, we ate steaks, we ate 20 eggs a day, and all this kind of stuff. But we got away with it because my cholesterol level was always like 130, 135 the most. Maybe it went to 140, but not more than that. And even though I ate steaks and I ate 20 eggs a day and crazy foods all the time, hamburger patties and whatever else. So when you're 20, you get away with a lot, but later on you don't. At your age, I would say eat more. I don't even know how old you are. You could be 40 or whatever you look like. But I would just go more with vegetable-based foods.
All right, great advice. Okay, we're going to go there, and then we're coming there. So right back there.
Hi, I first just want to make a comment to Kai. I'd like to say that I've been following your career for years. I'm over here,
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I did, Kyle.
right here. Been
yeah,
following
stand
your
up.
career for years. Myself and many like me, we all believe you're the champ, you're the best in the world. You are the thickest, the most cut. You're amazing, and thank you for doing what you do. And then I have a question for Arnold. Arnold, I'd like to know in 50 years, in 100 years, where do you see your legacy? Do you want to be known as a statesman, as an athlete, as an actor, as an icon, all these things together? Where do you see, how do you see people perceiving you 100 years from now?
Well, I think it's a question that I think people themselves would have a better answer than myself. My mission has always been that I want to improve people's lives. So even though I'm a Republican, but I don't see my issues that I fight for as political issues. I don't see them as Republican issues or Democratic issues. Like for instance, I'm one of those guys that is fighting for a healthy body and for people to exercise and to train. I don't think this is a political issue. But for some reason or the other, when you talk about a healthy world, then that becomes a political issue. You have the left that says, yeah, we want to create the Green New Deal, and then you have the right, saying there is no climate change and there's no global warming. So it's one of those odd things, But so I fight I'm a crusader for a fit body and for a healthy body. I'm also a crusader for a healthy world because we have 7 million people dying every year of pollution. So if you believe in global climate change or not, right now, every year, 7 million people die because of pollution, and it's because of fossil fuels. But we had to rely on fossil fuels, otherwise we would have never had this economic kind of boom that we experienced. But now we know that fossil fuels kills you, because of cancer, because of lung diseases, wiping you out early, people that live close to freeways, it wipes it. So I fight for that worldwide, and I created an organization, the R20, that fights for that, and they give speeches into social media in regards to that, and to kind of push that agenda along to get us off fossil fuels. So that's another thing that I'm doing. I fight for children, for instance, that if it's after-school programs, for instance. I started 25 years ago with after-school programs in Los Angeles before I ever thought about running for governor. And now they are nationwide, and we are providing after-school programs in California alone for an additional 1.6 million kids through our initiative, Proposition 49, where we raised $500 million on public money. And then we're doing that nationwide to provide after-school programs, because so many kids come from homes where both of the parents are working, so there's no one at home in the afternoon to help kids with homework assistance and with tutoring and with sports and fitness programs and arts programs and all that. So, and they drift around on the streets and they get into trouble, so that's why I created after-school programs. So that's another thing that I'm very passionate about and fighting for. Or redistricting reform, because it's the absurd thing in America is that for 200 years, politicians have fixed how they drew the district lines. And this is how Republicans lock themselves into Republican districts and Democrats lock themselves into Democratic districts, and no one can challenge them. So this is why you have 14% approval rating for Congress right now, but 98% get reelected. Why is that? Because it's a fixed system. So I see that there's nothing to do with Republican or Democrat at all. There's some states that where the Democrats fix it more than Republicans, and there's other states where Republicans fix it more than Democrats. But it's so weird. Take it all the way to the Supreme Court and let the Supreme Court make the decision to redraw the district lines, or to have states, like we did in California, have independent redistricting commissions that are ordinary folks, that are experts in drawing maps, and they draw the district lines, and we took the power away from the politicians. So those are the different issues that I'm fighting for, because I think it's wrong for us to have a fixed political system. We have a great, great country, but we can do better, and this is why in Washington you wonder, why is it that if it doesn't matter if the Democrats are in control or Republicans are in control, they can't get immigration reform done. They can't pay down the debt that we have. Now we have $22 trillion debt. No one is attempting to rebuild our infrastructure in this country, or to do true healthcare reform where everyone is insured, but without really making it impossible to pay for like it is right now. So I mean, it's just so many issues that do not get addressed because it's a fixed system and politicians don't really have to perform because no one can unseat them. So that's why you have 14% approval rating for these guys, 98% get reelected. So I fight for those things. So I don't know in the end, when my time is over, what is it that people are going to celebrate of my work? Is it the bodybuilding and fitness? Is it the redistricting reform, which we have a great momentum now, and we have now, 1/3 of all the districts are now drawn by independent commissions already in America since we started this fight, or is it going to be the environmental crusade? I leave this up to the people. I don't care. To me, what is important is I want to go to my grave and say that I did everything in my power to make life better for the people around the world. I don't see one country as evil and another country as good. I look at everyone. This is what we do in bodybuilding and in fitness. Everyone is always equal. It doesn't matter what country you come from. You are hailed and you can be a hero. Okay?
On the way over there, there was a question back there. Did you ever meet Bruce Lee?
I never met Bruce Lee, no, I did not. But I mean, I would have liked to meet him because he was a great showman. He was an extraordinary athlete, and he was one of the great first movie stars that really knew how to use movies to explode on the screen and to show his personality and his acting talent and his fighting skills and all of that stuff. He was explosive. There will only be one Bruce Lee, obviously. He was unique as much as there will only be one Steve Reeves. There will only be one Elvis Presley. There's one of those, it's a very rare kind of a human being that came on the screen and was really fantastic.
I would say there will only be one Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, hopefully we can all agree on that. We're going to go to this one. Can you guys all see? Is everybody able to see the sketching? Because we can't see it from up here. Are you guys able to see it? Okay, I just want to make sure you are able to see it.
I can see it. It's wild.
So I think we got
How
time
do
for
you do
just
it?
we got time for just a couple more. Let's go to this gentleman right here, and then we'll try to get through as many as we can. Guys, try to please keep it really short so we can go through as many as we can.
Definitely. Hey, Arnold, my name is Shahi Sabzavari. I went to arnoldfans.com. I just want to say you look fantastic. And how important is staying in great shape to your role in the new Terminator franchise? And what more can you say about your new role in the new Terminator 6?
Well, I'm reluctant to say anything about Terminator 6 other than we successfully completed the filming of it in Budapest. And I was filming there for 3 months, and I had a wonderful time. It's a fantastic city to shoot with great tax credits. 36% you get back of every dollar that you spend over there. The director, Tim Miller, was very, very talented. I could see why his movie Deadpool did make so much money and why it was so successful, because he's very organized. He's an expert with visual effects and special effects. And with stunts, he felt very comfortable directing all the actors, the young and older ones. It was a pleasure to work with, and it was an interesting kind of a film to do with the dynamic between him and Jim Cameron producing. So Jim Cameron is right now directing, as you know, Avatar. You know, Avatar number 2 and 3. And it could be part of number 4 also. But he's like, has taken on this enormous challenge. And so he's very busy with that, but he's a control freak. And you know, Terminator is kind of his baby. So he does get involved in the filming of the film. And so there were sometimes interesting discussions about, you know, which direction to go with a certain scene, or how the dialogue should finish, and what the certain look should be of an individual in a movie and all that stuff. So it was a collaboration between the director, Tim Miller, and between Jim Cameron. But Jim Cameron did stay out of it most of the time, I have to say. But when he did have time, he did not. He stayed in. So, but I mean, you know, he's a very, very talented guy, as you know. So there was, so I felt I was in good hands with both of them. And then, you know, Allison, David Allison was the producer. He's, of course, a very young and ambitious guy that can raise the money for the movie, which is important, because the movie, nevertheless, was, you know, I don't know what the budget really was, but it was somewhere between $160 million and $200 million. I couldn't tell you because the movie is not finished yet. It's still being worked on. Visual effects are being done now. I've seen 15 minutes of it and it looked great. I was very excited about that. But so that's all I really can tell you, because if I say more about it, then the studio goes usually crazy and they call me and they say, why did you give this away? We wanted to announce this on March 31st about some bogus thing, you know. They're also smart in the studios, you know. They really know it all. But so anyways, I let them make those decisions how to sell it. Absolutely, my pleasure.
Okay, back here.
I just want to thank you, Arnold, for everything you've done, for the inspiration you've given me. Stop, Matt. But what I really want to get into is thank you so much for the finest memories of me growing up, watching your movies, watching you work out. They're the greatest things I have with my papa, but my real question is for Kai. Now, those memories that I got with my grandfather, so when I reproduce, when are you going to start being in some action hero movies so we can start watching you?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Wow. I really appreciate you taking the time to even pose that question or even formulate that thought. You know, thoughts become things. They really, really do. I'm a true believer. And behind the scenes, I believe that I am working. We are in the process of working. And I'd like to be able to answer that question more substantively very, very, very soon. We got a chance to do some work with Stranger Things. We've got a lot of questions about that. We're really excited to be able to make some interesting announcements about the coming season. But just like Arnold said, I can't speak too soon because I don't want anybody calling me with hate mail anytime soon. But we're excited about that, and it's the best thing I can offer in a way of answering the question that you just asked me. One of the things that are so important with when we talk about the legacy of a man, and I heard this question asked to Arnold Schwarzenegger a little bit earlier, we are all here. We're joined tonight or this morning or this afternoon under the same common ground, being the idea that we've all been influenced and inspired in some way, affected by the work of this man. You know, I'm standing here on a platform that has been developed, you know, as an opportunity that was presented to me by this man. I think if we were to have to answer the question of how will this man's legacy be perceived going forward, I think it's too numerable to tell. It's too numerable to say. We all have been influenced in so many ways. He's touched all of our lives. And yeah, man, I would like to see myself in a movie, a few movies. I'd love to be an action hero. One day, real soon, hopefully, we'll see. Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, I hate to do it, but we're actually going to have to wrap this up. But can we get a quick look on the monitors at these pieces so that we can see how they're going. How are you doing, Kai? Are you not done yet? Do you need a little more time?
Well, I'm as done as I'm going to be right now, I guess.
But can you guys see on the monitors? Can everybody see what we've got done here? The monitors, there's one right there. We just can't see them. The back's to us, and there's one right over there.
Where are you looking to see? Where do they see? Where the
Wait, where are you? Oh, it's right here. Sorry, right here, right here. Yeah, there we go. So what do you guys think? Pretty cool, huh? Comic-Con, Arnold Con. This could be the start of something beautiful. I think it really could. So, Arnold, thank you so much for being here. Kai Green, ladies and gentlemen, Doug Mankey, let's give them a big hand. You can meet them in section A of the show. And let's give a huge hand to the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing such a great job. Thank you. Okay, see you all. Have a good time.
I'm Mark Walters from
Hey,
Fango.com.
nice. Thank you very much. Thank you. Be good.